So, what if a country could back itself up to the cloud? I mean, not just its data, but the very essence of its statehood, making it completely recoverable even after a catastrophic invasion. Now, I know that sounds like something straight out of a sci fi movie, right? But it's not. This is the story of how that's happening right now and how it's fundamentally changing what it even means to be a country. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the very real threat that sparked this whole radical idea. Then, we'll explore the brilliant solution they came up with, the data embassy. After that, we'll see how this model is now spreading across the globe for all sorts of reasons. And finally, we'll get into the massive legal and frankly philosophical questions this creates for all of us. To really get this futuristic concept, we've actually got to start in the past. It all begins with one country's very specific and very deep-seated fear of simply disappearing. See, this single event, it's like the ghost that haunts all of Estonia's national security planning. This wasn't just about stealing some paper. It was about seizing the state's memory, its very proof of existence. The idea that an enemy could physically erase your nation just by carting away its records, that's the core trauma that led to everything that followed. And you can see exactly how that threat evolved over time. I mean, it started with a physical occupation in 1940, but fast forward to 2007, and the threat became a total digital disruption. A massive cyber attack completely took down Estonia's government, its banks, its media, everything. The battlefield had changed, and that forced them to invent a completely new kind of defense. For centuries, the world ran on a really simple rule. To be a country, you needed land. Your power, your laws, your entire identity, it all just stopped at your physical border. If you wanted to control a country, you just had to control its territory. As simple as that. And right here, this is the question that just shatters that entire 350-year-old model. If the real core of your country is digital, is your physical territory still the only thing that matters? Estonia realized the answer was a hard no, and that realization forced them to invent something entirely new. All right, so let's get to the solution. Let's see how this one question builds into a radical new reality, a nation that can actually survive the loss of its own homeland. Now, it sounds almost deceptively simple, but it is absolutely revolutionary. They built the world's first data embassy. And yes, it's a high-security server room in a friendly nation, but here's the kicker. It is legally considered Estonian soil. This makes the essence of their entire nation portable and, most importantly, totally recoverable. And just so we're crystal clear about the scale here, we are not talking about backing up a few files. No. This is the entire functional core of the country. We're talking about your birth certificate, the deed to your house, your pension records, the court system. Literally everything needed to run the state is sitting on these servers. And you know, as groundbreaking as this all feels, there's actually a powerful historical precedent for it. During World War II, governments from occupied countries like France and the Netherlands fled to London. From there, they kept their legal status and legitimacy alive. The data embassy, it's simply the 21st century digital equivalent of that exact same wartime strategy. So this digital version of a wartime strategy, which was born from Estonia's really specific fears, is now becoming a blueprint for nations all over the world that are facing a whole range of totally different challenges. And as this idea starts to spread, we're seeing two main strategies pop up. You've got the diplomatic model, like Estonia's, which relies on a formal treaty to basically create a little piece of sovereign territory abroad. And then there's this really clever legal model, like Bahrain's, which flips jurisdiction on its head, saying any foreign data stored on their soil is still legally governed by its home country's laws. And the appeal is just incredibly broad. For a country like Monaco, it's a hedge against natural disasters. For island nations, it's a lifeline, a way to preserve their very statehood if rising seas literally swallow their land. And for digital hubs like Bahrain, it's actually a business tool to attract international clients by guaranteeing their data's sovereignty. And this whole concept is evolving so fast. The next step isn't just a passive backup, a digital life raft. The goal is to create active infrastructure. We're talking about using AI to run essential services from abroad, even if the home country is completely offline. It's a huge shift, from a simple backup plan to a remote control cockpit for the entire state. But as you can probably guess, when you go from a backup plan to a remote control cockpit, you fly straight into a legal Wild West. We've basically created digital nations without a digital United Nations to govern them. and that raises some huge, completely unanswered questions.
I mean, just think about it. If you have sovereign Estonian data sitting on a server in Luxembourg, and there's a legal fight over that data, who is the ultimate judge? Is it the Estonians, the Luxembourgers, the European Union? The treaty they have works for them, but there's no global rulebook for this stuff.
Right, and what happens if this digital fortress gets breached? If a hacker gets in, who's on the hook? Who pays the price? Is it the country that owns the data, the country that promised to protect it, or the private company that actually runs the server farm? Right now, the answer is dangerously unclear.
It's like we've built this incredible new vehicle for sovereignty, but we've done it in a world with no roads, no traffic laws, and no police to enforce them. The technology is just years ahead of the international law needed to manage it. And this is a subtle but really critical risk. The word embassy carries immense legal weight under international treaties, treaties that were designed for buildings and people, but those treaties say absolutely nothing about server racks. So that protection it offers, it might be more of a powerful analogy than a legally ironclad guarantee if a real crisis hits.
So all of this legal uncertainty, it forces us to pull way, way back to the biggest picture. Because this quiet innovation isn't just a legal headache, it is forcing us to rethink the very map of the world. For the first time in history, technology has fundamentally broken the one-to-one link between a country and a single contiguous spot on the map. A nation can now exist, operate, and govern from multiple places all at once. And if you're a smaller state, that is a defensive game changer. If an aggressor invades your country, they may seize your land, sure, but they haven't actually seized your state. The government can continue to function, serve its citizens, and maintain its legal legitimacy from abroad. It makes conquest way more difficult and much less complete. To put this all in perspective, experts are comparing this to the moment back in the 1940s and 50s when nations decided to extend their territory out into the sea to claim oil and gas reserves. The data embassy is seen as a similarly fundamental expansion of what a country is, not into the sea, but into the digital realm. And this, really, is the ultimate takeaway. A simple, practical idea that was born from historical fear is now forcing us to ask the most profound questions about statehood. Because if a nation is no longer just a patch of land, but it's also a string of code on a server thousands of miles away, well, the lines on our maps start to lose their meaning.